Best game in a long time, in my opinion.
100%.
Hmm.
I think watching that, I can slowly realize that my prophecy about France is coming true. Ireland just completely dominated them, and I don't think in the 2 years that France have been this dominant, I've never seen them just like tactically just outplayed like they were on Saturday. Like it was just complete
Yeah.
domination.
This is probably the best team they've played in the 2 years that they've
Mm,
been as dominant as they have been.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, 100%.
It's the South Africa team, it's New Zealand team, stuff
No,
like that.
and this Ireland team is better at the
I
moment.
Yeah.
wouldn't say the New Zealand teams, but I'll definitely put the South African, and this is completely non-biased. I would put the South African teams in there.
I'd say this Ireland team is better than most of the Southern Hemisphere teams right now on form.
No.
I mean,
Yes, they are.
at a test level, but not they won't be doing any damage
Test level, yeah.
at a World
Well,
Cup. So like,
I mean, they've beaten all the Southern Hemisphere teams, so you can't really dispute that. Deserve
Come
to be
World Cup
thanked
time, they'll
for more.
crumble.
I think what
I'm
Jack and I are
not,
trying to
I'm not
say is,
disagreeing.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is just a difference between like a test team and a World Cup team, and Ireland are a test team. But looking at it from a tactical like perspective, what did we do? What did we think that Ireland did to shut France out that game? Like tactically, what
Um,
did France do?
Chicken.
it was Ireland's defense. I thought was the game winner. I think they
Yeah.
shut down a lot of France's attack, especially in the first couple of minutes. They were all over them, and quite often it led to France's poor kicking game. I thought there was a
Mm,
lot of poor kicks due to Ireland's defense.
I
Do you
think
think they? Sorry, you go, Sally. You go.
I think just adding on to what you're saying about defense, Kieran, a lot of people took to like Twitter and social media to say like Ntamack had one of the worst games of his career, international career for
Yeah,
France, because of just how immense that Irish line speed was. He was having no
yeah, 100%.
time to move the ball, and he was literally under pressure every single time, which that saw a lot of him making a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes. And I think if I think that's how you beat France. You don't give them time, you rush them and you force them to make mistakes like they were forced on Saturday.
I think the first 20 minutes it was all Ireland though. Like France didn't grow into the
100%.
game at all. And then the likes of Dupont came round, started like targeting the breakdown. And then obviously the Antonio hit was a big thing in the game because it kind of just shifted Ireland's momentum forward even
Mm,
more.
Ireland were like disrupting France in terms of the breakdown. They got a lot of purchase off the breakdown, and then also it didn't help that Entomac was overplaying a bit in the middle of the
mm,
pitch. I felt like him and Dupont probably could have kicked a bit more, and that's what led to the mistakes. For like you look at Entomac giving the ball away for the try scoring opportunity for Hansen.
yeah.
It's France normally, I don't know what they're doing. They normally just kick that away in the middle of the pitch. They don't mess about. But for some reason, they came out with the strategy to play, and they've overplayed in the end.
100%. And I think adding on to what you're saying about the breakdown, one Irish player that stood out for me was Caelan Doris. And I think he's
Yeah.
increasingly becoming one of the best eights. Whether he can do it at a World Cup, obviously, is a different discussion. But in terms of the disruption he can cause at the breakdown and giving Ireland go forward, he was just immense on the weekend for Ireland. He was absolutely
He
just incredible.
the whole of Ireland's back row dominated the French back row in my opinion. Like the Doris, he was everywhere. Josh Van der Fleer as well. They dominated in the pack. France didn't really have much physicality, I thought.
100%. So in the long term, if we're looking at this like in the long term, obviously looking at this the competition, I think France have Scotland their next game. Do you think obviously the Italy result was a bit of a people saw that as character building, I think, for France, but I think this result is obviously going to affect them. What do we think's going to happen when they face against a very good Scottish team?
Where's it being played?
France. So that obviously that's a factor as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, France win 100%. And one thing we got to remember about this French team is I feel like some, especially you, Tally, counting them out of the World Cup. You got to
Yeah.
remember they don't lose at home, and the World Cup's in France.
Yeah, I'll give them that.
That's very true.
I just think for me, like this will be very telling about how much of a big team France is because they've had a very successful 2 years. Is how they respond to this loss now, which really shows whether they're going to be champions. Do they respond from this loss now and go back to the France that we know they can be and dominate all the other teams, or do they continue to play at the level they were in the Italy game and the level they were last week? Because I don't necessarily think I don't think France were 100%, and I don't think they have been 100% from the start of this tournament. They've been looked a lot more sluggish and making more mistakes than what we know they can do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
The thing like that they'll hold on to is they've still got the bits and pieces. They've still got all the components they need to be the best team in the world. Like you look at Dupont, he couldn't be shut down at all by France. He was still finding ways to make line breaks or make
Penaud
a
as
lot of
well.
meters. Penaud as well. They couldn't keep him quiet. So
Yeah,
like
Penaud
for
played
me,
amazing.
it's just one loss. Like it's really not going to change how I see France and how France see France. More importantly,
Still contenders.
100%.
Oh, easily.
Contenders for
You
the Six
can't
Nations.
knock them off
Contenders for
out
the
of
Six
one
Nations.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Even the Six
Well,
Nations, they're still contenders.
Ireland still have to go to Murrayfield and beat Scotland, who are very confident. And then they've got to back that up against England, who will have had more time under Steve Borthwick and Kevin Sinfield. So those are two challenges that I feel like are being underrated a little bit. Those are very
100%.
difficult games to win.
100%.
But obviously Ireland are the favourites here now.
I just want to add into when we're talking about the game, how good was Johnny Sexton during that France game?
Incredible. You wouldn't think he's 39. You honestly wouldn't think he's 39.
He is in an armchair when he plays in the Irish team. He has all the components around him, which, don't get me wrong, he still has to perform, which he did. Yeah. But he still has every factor built around him.
But would you not say Ntamack?
Yeah,
would you not say Ntamack has the same effect?
No, Ntamack doesn't have that. No.
Oh no,
because it's not all about
definitely
Ntamack.
has that as well.
Ntamack
definitely has that as well.
Jack, I'd argue Ntamack probably has more. Probably playing with one of the best centers in the world, a generational scrum half, insane wingers. You can't make the argument.
No, I mean in a tactical sense, not a player sense.
He means a system. He means a system.
Yeah, I mean for the system.
You'd also argue that Ntamack has a great deal of pressure relieved off his shoulders with Dupont inside of him, because Dupont will always, in the big moments, take on the important kicks, important carries, etc. And also Ntamack doesn't have to worry about his goal kicking game as well, with a fullback that kicks for France.
What I just find incredible about Sexton is whenever he goes off the pitch, it doesn't really, and I'm not saying Ireland are bad, but it's considerably noticeable how much they drop off without him playing.
Yeah, but it's not though, because when he came off,
you say that, yeah,
him on, they still played just as good.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying they played badly at all. Of course, they're in full control of that game, but it's his presence, his absence more rather is noticeable. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's not.
I can agree
because in the last 20 minutes of that game, Ireland had France in a chokehold. Literally, they couldn't do anything because they pinned them every single time. And Sexton wasn't even on the pitch.
One thing I will say,
like, you can't
and Ireland can take huge confidence from this, is that they were able to close a game out without Johnny Sexton. Yeah. And they're putting a lot more trust in what's his name? Is it Ross Byrne?
Ross Byrne.
Yeah.
He did a great few kicks actually.
He kicked in that right corner. He pinned them really well there.
Yeah, they're putting a lot more trust in him, and he's performing. So they just need to keep it like that until the World Cup, because obviously Sexton, you can't 7 games on the bounce, very little turnaround time. He's not going to be able to play every minute of every game at 38 years old.